Okay, everyone. Hello there, and welcome to Squabblebox's podcast commentary on Night of the Living Dead, done for Halloween 2013. Dylan Spicer here with Dave James. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Dylan.
How are you doing? You well?
Good, thank you. We're going to watch one of my favourite ever horror films.
Oh, fantastic. One of my favourites too, I have to say. And even this opening scene is just so creepy.
What, with the library music?
Well, well, considering this is a bunch of film students shooting a car in the 60s with, as you say, library music over the top, there's just something really unnerving about it.
It's true, which considering it's just on sticks with very static shots, it works very well. Yeah, 140 grand I think it cost.
Really?
In 1968.
And it's made in the millions now, I assume, or...
It's, as of 2009, it's estimated to have made around 250 million.
Really? So better than John Carter, then?
Yeah, you could say that. Definitely better than John Carter.
Well, yeah, it's a modern classic. And I think when you look at this again, it's one of those films that's just influenced so many people, not just horror directors, but people across the board. And it's really just added a new layer of realism to the zombie genre, and to be honest, one of the tricky things about our job today is to find something new to say about it. So, looking forward to that challenge.
Indeed, I think it's worth starting with the point that this is very much where the modern definition of zombie comes from. Because obviously at the start you have like voodoo culture and films like I Walked with a Zombie, and where it's very much tied into world history, but as far as the walking shambles of meat that want to eat people, this is very much the start.
Absolutely. And you think from there, you've got all the things that would influence that. You know, in many ways, it's going to be doing things like 28 Days Later.
Yep.
And even you could look at some vampire films as well. Just adding that extra realism is what this did to the horror genre. In a period just after, in the 50s, you've got all those atomic mutant films, which were, although very silly, this really took zombies into a gritty, realistic new era, and took monsters into a gritty, realistic new era at the same time.
Definitely, yeah. It's definitely got a very documentary-esque feel to it.
And I think a strong cast as well, actually, considering, again, this is a bunch of student filmmakers, essentially, trying to bring something together. You can see here we've got Johnny and Barbara, and, alright, they're not the world's greatest actors, but they're perfectly believable in this role, and I think when, spoiler alert, Johnny is threatened in a minute, there's some nasty stuff going on there.
I don't even remember what the man looks like.
Johnny, it takes you 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes to put the wreath on the grave.
And I think what also works about it very much is that it just kicks off so quickly, this film. Like, again, spoiler alert, we're going to have zombies within the next 3 minutes. And that is the start of the modern zombie, and they really haven't changed to this day. Like, that zombie could be in a 2013 film without even blinking.
I like this bit where the radio kicks back in and ignores it.
And I think it's something I'd actually quite like to focus on in this early part of the commentary, is how a big part of what makes zombie films modern is the way they use technology like radio, television, that kind of stuff, to make the threat really come back home.
Which row is it in?
Yeah, it is fantastic. Like, there's not much build up before the horror kicks in. But you feel like you know these characters from the off.
And it's not, I guess not that much is needed, which is quite nice, isn't it? Because it is about normal life just suddenly being plunged into this really weird situation.
Plus, what better way to start it than in a graveyard?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There it is.
And it's kind of, I think it's quite interesting how, like, not necessarily unlikable these characters are, but they're kind of rowing. They're not some kind of just like G. Willikers characters at all. They're being like kind of dicks about it, you know.
I wonder what happened to the one from last year.
You have this thing about returning to, is it Mother's Grave they're going to? Is it the
Yes, I think it's Mother's Grave.
Mother's Grave? And it's not a very nice conversation, really. They're not necessarily like likeable people, and that's what works for the whole film. I think you have these people who are just thrown into the situation, rather than it being a case of goodies versus baddies.
Yeah, that's the great thing. The best zombie movies from this onward, they're about the people, aren't they? The people are always the worst.
Yeah.
They're the real enemy.
And I think that's what works out the whole thing is the sense of it's actually people fighting each other
Hey, come on.
rather than zombies attacking the walls, which again I'm sure we'll tackle a bit later on. Maybe slightly cheesy that
Yeah.
under effect there.
There you are in the back of the frame.
Yeah.
No perceptible threat
Mm.
until.
But then even equally, like it just shows, doesn't it? Like this is again, sorry to reiterate, but a student film made in the '60s, and
Yeah,
that's so much more effective than CGI. That one man walking through like that, isn't it?
Though it's worth knowing they did start with commercials, didn't they?
Mm.
Romero's company, Image 10, started with commercials. So the relative amateurs. But
Yeah, certainly not like total. You know, it's not like this is their first thing, of course, but relative amateurs, and I think it just shows what you can achieve on such a limited budget if you can just get the feeling right, get the mood right.
Johnny,
You're still afraid.
stop it now. I need it.
Here it comes.
Back hopping. Get you, Barbara.
Fantastic. As a funny aside, did you know when they showed Romero Shaun of the Dead? There's a great line in it from Ed. We're coming to get you, Barbara.
Yeah, absolutely.
Apparently, Romero, it completely passed him by. He didn't.
Really?
He didn't peg that reference at all.
Really, that's well jokes.
There you go.
And even just this bit now, you see, like, I mean, obviously at this moment you don't know if he's just like a murderer or something like that. And think even to these days, how many like zombie films come out and the special effects just look so bad, you know, they really don't work. And here, you just totally believe that as a threat.
It's like some people have criticised this because it's quite a spry zombie, shall we say?
Mm.
A bit light on his feet, but I'll put that down to the fact that he's recently arisen
Yeah.
from the grave.
Yeah. It is
He's
a
not
graveyard.
quite decomposed.
And where else to find that sort of person but in a graveyard, of course, so... Again, that's a little bit cheesy.
Yeah, the lighting effects not great.
But again, as library music goes, it's not too shabby.
It's worth pointing out as well that this is a public domain film.
Mm.
It's probably the most used film in other films I've ever seen. From Sid and Nancy to Stir of Echoes. Loads and loads of films have used this just because it's public domain.
Yeah, no,
I'd like to think that they think it's a classic rather than because they can use it for free.
just for free, yeah. It's a bit of both, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah.
Do you know why it went into the public domain? Was it just
The copyright was on the original title, which I think is Night of the Flesh Eaters or something like that.
okay.
Or Night of the something.
So it's just a technicality?
But when the
basically?
distributors, whoever they were, changed the title, they didn't include the title card with the copyright on.
Oh, no way.
So basically it belongs to no one.
That's so crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, and again, of course, that's why we're doing this today, ironically.
Indeed. Please don't take this down, YouTube.
Yeah, I was going to say. So we're just going to sit here and watch the film at this rate. But yeah, I think for a public domain film, it's obviously probably the best one I can think of. I mean, something better than Reefer Madness, for example.
Interesting factoid here, like the car was actually damaged, so that's why we get the bit of the car hitting the tree here,
Oh, really?
for a bit of production value.
Oh, nice.
That's why I'm fast zombie.
Yeah. Again, yeah, he's straight out of the grave, isn't he? So. But again, you can see what, we're 5 minutes in already, the action's really kicked off.
Yeah, wasted no time.
But it doesn't feel too kind of straight into it at all. I mean, it's not like gory, for example. And it would have been interesting at the time just to see what people thought of it in terms of a new style of monster movie.
Well, yeah, only 8 years after films like Psycho, I imagine, this would have been a real punch in the gut.
Mm.
And we're already reaching the farmhouse.
Mm.
Not even 15 minutes in.
It's interesting, obviously, they're the petrol pumps. I've never noticed that before. Petrol pumps play quite a crucial point later in the film, are actually referenced there. That's interesting.
Yep. Here we have the great staple of confining yourself to a space. And
Yeah. battling.
the undead that are outside. It's been copied to death.
It's like the perfect setup for computer games as well, isn't it?
Indeed, yeah. I always thought it was a missed opportunity in season 2 of The Walking Dead, where it was on a farm.
That's true,
I
actually.
always thought they were gonna kick into a Night of the Living Dead like reference with like a swarm of them, but
Instead of just waiting.
never
walking
went
around.
there.
It's interesting. There's like it's quite like, sorry to be slightly film studies kid, but quite expressionist, and the whole thing has a slight taste of German expressionism to it. You know, that kind of Cabinet of Dr. Caligari feel almost. It's interesting how much of a spooky film it is. They are clearly playing some classic horror tropes here. It's not just some kind of gritty remake in terms of cinematography. Sorry, remake. A gritty interpretation in terms of cinematography. There is that kind of classic horror element to it, just with an entirely new style of monster.
No, I was. If there's one thing that's dated about this film, it is the character of Barbara. Would you say?
In what regard?
In the fact that she has a total psychological breakdown, is one step away from being catatonic.
I guess, yeah, she's not the post-feminist.
No, not the best heroine of all time. That's why in the 1990 remake directed by Tom Savini, definitely changed that element in the film.
But then, I mean, it is quite interesting to have that kind of picture. That's a slightly corny shot again. You know, to have that character like that, again, when you're so used to, say, that kind of snappy back and forth dialogue of 50s horror films, you know, where they're basically sitting in a science space talking about the monster outside. It's quite nice to have that someone who's just completely silent, who's a bit more just psychologically shaken by it. You know, we've gone a long time now without any sort of dialogue at all. And
Indeed, yeah. And the phone lines are dead.
But again, it's that thing about zombie films using modern forms of communication in regards to how they express fear. It's always been stuff like the phone lines go dead, the power gets cut, the radio either dies or reports a horrible situation. It's always been that feeling how you build a world without actually going too far out.
Yeah, that's true. Most of the world in this film is built from TV and radio broadcast. Really conveys a sense that it's happening nationwide.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I've always been really impressed about the film from a production point of view is it is done on such a limited budget, and they've got such amazing extras as the zombies.
Yeah.
You know, they really give it their all.
Yeah, but I believe it was a Romero regular thing that each zombie got paid $1.
Yeah, okay. And they really...
$1 on a t-shirt. And there you go.
And that's quite a nasty bit of gore for the 60s.
Good dummy work there. Here we have the entrance of Ben, played by Dwayne Jones.
Yes, indeed. Obviously, it's been discussed before about having a race element to the main character.
Yeah.
Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Romero always said it was untrue.
Apparently, Dwayne Jones was cast just because he was the best actor that happened to be around for the role, and
he is really strong.
Yeah,
as well, isn't he?
It's, but that adds so much, commentary and an undercurrent to the film that just wouldn't be there otherwise.
And even just that the fact that they don't do anything with it is nice. You know, that he is just the protagonist without having to drag race into the issue whatsoever.
There is a famous story, it might be apocryphal, but on the night they finished the film, Romero was carrying the negative in the car to New York, and that's the night that Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Which just makes the end of this film all the more poignant, I think.
One thing I did hear, on a completely unrelated note, is George Romero used to get a lot of films out of film libraries when he grew up in New York in this, what would that be, kind of 50s. Yeah. And there was another kid who kept borrowing them, and every
Scorsese?
time, and it was bloody Scorsese, yeah.
Red Shoes.
Yeah. So, again, whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Yep, Scorsese and Romero, big Powell and Pressburger fans. Not that has any relation to this film. Not unless you count Peeping Tom, of
Yeah, yeah.
course.
And again, it's amazing, isn't it, seeing all the setting of these zombie tropes in terms of it just turned into a battle for survival straight away. Like, it really hasn't moved on that much in the nigh on 50 years since this film.
See this blood here? Chocolate syrup.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because black and white film stock.
So a little tip there. If you're shooting in black and white film stock still, probably shoot digital, but
Yeah, this film,
That's
if made today, would be even cheaper.
yeah. Though of course that's the. I mean, the thing is, isn't it? It does have its charm because it is shot on film, and that was always the classic thing with films of this period because film stock's still so good.
Yeah.
Like this is no different film stock. Okay, maybe slight exaggeration, but this isn't much different film stock to one shooting in say 2005. And if you can nail it with film stock in the day, you just get these classics that last forever. Whereas a lot of stuff, say, shot in digital about 10 years ago, it's going to look so ropey. And I think that's still what sets it aside from a lot of zombie films produced these days. Like, it is shot by really technically proficient filmmakers. Like, so good cinematography, good sound design, good direction. And I think that's the problem with a lot of zombie films these days, is there's just so many made and just so many of them are still really naff. Because it's just seen as a kind of easy way to make a feature, which just simply isn't the case at all.
So all this would have been brutal in 1968.
Mm-hmm. And it is just still like so nightmarish.
Yeah, it's like with no other films that were comparable to this at the time. It really is making a formula that has been repeated ever since. You know, I don't think there's been a zombie film that hasn't referenced this in some form.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you couldn't really.
Yeah.
Because all the formulas, the rules are still just so tried and tested. Unless you really started to mix it up a bit. And even then, people are always going to be just pushing it back to this. So, do they ever actually use the word zombie in this film?
No, they don't. No.
Because obviously they do in Dawn of the Dead, but...
Yeah, it's interesting in the fact that it's only really critics and audiences that applied the zombie name to it.
Again, there, sorry to bring it back to German Expressionism, but again, you can see like the makeup on his face there is really kind of just their black and white shadows.
I believe that's the co-writer John Russo here.
Oh, really?
Being killed.
Guess it's going to be one of those films that's never get everyone involved.
Yeah.
So is there any particular reason Dave White still stands out as one of your favourites?
I don't know. I think it's a conceptually perfect film. For the idea and the budget, it's you know, there's no real beating this. To me, it's still my favourite of Romero's Dead films. I know Dawn of the Dead is perhaps the more popular and it was more commercially successful, but to me, this is the ultimate.
I mean, I really love Night, Dawn and Day.
Yep.
And I just think about this one, I think, like, weirdly, like, Day might be my favourite. Just I really like the setting, but there's such a black humour to it.
Day is probably the most underrated.
But I think this one really, like, there isn't much humour to it at all. It's remarkable how on the nail it is, and I think that's the other thing with a lot of zombie films, is they do have this kind of knowing wink to them. Whereas when you look back at this one, and it is actually just quite a scary horror film. There's no kind of black humour to it at all. And I think that's maybe another thing that more zombie films could undertake these days, is just keeping it straight and not trying to make it funny and too gory or anything like that. It's just focus on that menace of that horrible situation.
Yeah, plus I just think the black and white works in its favour.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, although obviously there are now colorised versions.
Yeah.
You couldn't. It wouldn't look good, would it, in colour? You just know it.
I suppose a testament to this film is, as we've discussed before, the 30th anniversary edition,
Yeah.
which added scenes in,
Yes, indeed.
which were awful and probably made on more money than this film cost
Yeah.
back then.
I think when you look back at this, you can just tell. I mean, for a start, it's clearly shot to be in black and white. You know, you see the shadows are so distinct. And the problem with, basically, if you haven't seen the 30th anniversary version, they just throw in this character of a priest
Yep.
who's like doing a funeral for a murderer, and then the murderer comes back to life, and I believe it's played by the same man, isn't it? It's basically the prequel. So the man who we saw the original zombies comes at the start, that's how he rose from the grave. And it just doesn't work. There's something really static about it, and ironically the acting's probably
Yeah.
not as good as this.
Yeah. Make sure you don't watch the 30th anniversary edition.
And it ends on this really ridiculous thing with this priest got bitten, but he's somehow not turned into a zombie, and they give him a little dog just in case he gets bitten, and it just adds nothing.
Why don't you find some wood support, something about the carpet?
The classic boarding up the windows.
And again, it just seems all so obvious
Yeah.
these days.
And even referenced as far as Resident Evil.
That's true, actually.
Yeah.
But I think it's quite nice how there's like a you can feel the time go in this movie. There's a very physical element to them boarding up the house. Like it feels like you can see the tasks start to get to be done. Like it lights the fire in the fireplace, all that kind of stuff. And that's what's really nice. You actually, as you can see from now, you know, there aren't zombies for a fair old bit now. You just see them locked in this house trying to deal with each other.
Yeah, I don't think Dwayne Jones got enough credit as an actor. He's, he really leads this film. He powers it on.
Yeah, he's really
and
solid.
compared to the damn near useless Barbara.
But then again, it's nice, isn't it, to have those contrasts again? Because you're so used to the cliches of horror of the 40s and 50s, so it's interesting to see them do something different. So Dave, I guess we've got to discuss it. I mean, one of the things that obviously people talk about this movie is that it's an allegory for Vietnam War, the general kind of increase in violence in general in the media.
Yep.
I wondered what you thought of that.
Yeah, I suppose you can see a lot of parallels with the footage that was coming across from the war back then. And especially particularly the news depiction of that. I mean, it's so long ago that it's hard to look at it in those terms, but yeah, I'm sure if you watched it back then, parallels to Vietnam are fairly obvious in the fact that going up against an enemy they don't really understand.
That's true, actually.
They're outnumbered.
And it's that kind of the destruction of those kind of traditional American values as well.
Yep.
In the face of this new evidence. And I mean, I just suppose, obviously, I'm sure there is an element of deliberacy to it, but you're just going to be like kind of through osmosis. You know, you're going to be picking up on all those vibes in the media, aren't you? When you're making a film like this, it's going to just be all those things that are playing on your mind.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, it's interesting. Again, I've forgotten quite how little dialogue there was in this first half. You never get to know much about the characters. Obviously, you know, Dwayne turns out to be a truck driver. He does that little monologue in a minute. Obviously, you know, Barbara's with her brother and stuff. But apart from that, you just get the sense of people suddenly forced together. And what could so easily, these could be just such like filler scenes. Just because we're on a limited budget, let's just whack in the stuff. Call it Night of the Flesh Eaters, whack it out for nothing. But it just doesn't feel like that, does it, at all? It feels... It's gripping.
Even though this was an attempt for Romero and co to become established filmmakers, they obviously gave it their all.
And yeah, for such a limited budget, I just think the production values work. Like, he is boarding up a house there, you know?
I think, didn't Romero handle the camera as well?
Again, I'm not entirely sure on that front. It probably wouldn't surprise me on a production of this level.
If we have to, we can run in here and board up the doors.
Again, we're just getting sucked into it.
Yeah.
So we got the TV scene going up relatively soon. I guess I'd just like to bring in this idea. I've been thinking about zombies for a while. Like, why are zombies so popular in modern culture? And for me, it's because it is this transmedia element that in a good zombie film, unless it's set post apocalypse, so when you have a sort of kind of pre-apocalypse zombies arising like this one, a good zombie film will always have an element of the media. Like you'll hear stuff on the radio, you'll hear stuff on the television in later films, there'll be internet stuff.
Yep.
There'll be a sense of the world coming through all these media sources. And obviously I think that's very relatable to how we find out about things like
Yeah, and
wars.
sort of culminated in Romero's own Diary of the Dead
Sure.
with camcorders.
Yeah, definitely. It was just a shame that never really came to fruition in a proper way, wasn't it? And it was a shame. What I actually didn't like about Diary of the Dead is that you seemed very sniffy and cynical about it, when actually if he'd done something that really embraced that concept, you could do something really interesting with it. And I think that's something that could still be untapped in the zombie horror world.
Yeah, I think zombies are popular because they are us, and everyone dies. So I
Yeah.
suppose on two levels it's very relatable.
Definitely. And it's set in a world that we can believe in. You know, this isn't a castle in Transylvania.
Indeed.
This isn't like radioactive ants in Arizona. It's people finding out about horrible things over the news.
I believe Romero is quoted as saying that it's the new society devouring the old, which I think is a good way to look at it. Especially as this is a late 60s going to the early 70s film with a lot of cultural friction in that period.
Absolutely.
It could almost be the new generation taking over the old ideals in a way.
Definitely, and it feels very like, it just feels very zeitgeisty, doesn't it, without it ever being too in your face. You know, it's not like there's some deliberate political references or anything like that. It just feels, it's a allegorical story, but as you say, the concept of that story is very good at the same time. Kind of like that sort of Lord of the Flies thing almost as well, where you have those different ideas, but in itself it's a really good idea.
Yeah, it's just so character driven.
And they got damn lucky with the actors as well.
Yeah.
So again, you've got Ben's anecdote here, which is just such a good way of building what's happening across this world. And when you cut to the zombies outside, you just totally believe that it is swarming over them.
Yeah, definitely. This does so much work for the film, filling you in on what's going on.
Actually, be quite a good monologue if you're ever going to do an audition for a horror film.
Yeah.
Staring at me. Just wanted to crush them.
Plus, it's just so horrible watching it in retrospect, knowing what happens at the end.
Yeah, sure. Is
I
it-
suppose, like in the Vietnam, that it's all effort for nothing at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true, actually. And I think, as well, you know, you're so used to, especially in those 50s horror films, having like a real hero. With this, it's just so bleak throughout. It just starts, like I said earlier, with quite unlikable characters and just continues in this bleak strand all the way through. There really are no moments of joy, are there? And it does add that realist element to it. If it was to happen, it just wouldn't be a hero situation.
I suppose even though Ben's the archetypal hero of the film, even so he's in shades of grey, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
There's no one real hero in this film.
And although he takes charge of the situation, it's not like, you know, he's that kind of brave, handsome, daring do guy.
Oh, it's late. Why did we start so late?
And again, how long have we gone without zombies now? A long, long time.
If you'd gotten up earlier.
And
Barbara's going catatonic.
but of course,
And I said, I'm not afraid, Johnny.
I don't know if you heard. Again, this is a total anecdote, but apparently, I'm not sure if this is because it was public domain because the rights were so cheap. They did show this in a few children's matinees on like Saturday mornings, and they used to have like Saturday mornings pictures. They just show this,
Can you imagine that?
and like 5 to 7 year olds watching this. Like I first saw it when I was 15, I think, and it still freaked me out then. And that was the bloody 30th anniversary edition with the NAF start. There is just something really stressful about it. And I think it's only because I'm kind of desensitised because I know every bloody minute of it. No, I'm not still a bit chilled out now.
And he grabbed me. He grabbed me. And he ripped at me. He held me.
Get a grip, Babs.
Oh, I
See, again, that's not like
Johnny, help
that's
me.
Ben there again. It's not like a traditional hero thing, is it? You know, he's clearly just a normal guy locked in the situation, just trying to deal with it.
And then Johnny came and he ran and he fought it.
I think he's probably my favourite protagonist out of the Dead films as well.
It's a good question. Do quite like Flyboy in Dawn of the Dead.
Right.
I mean, I know I said I like Day the best, but Dawn's just still so good as well. And I think it's so difficult because these three films have just been done to death in popular culture. You know, it's like if people say Dawn of the Dead is your favourite film, it's like the most obvious kind of horror zombie archetype thing to say, isn't it? But I do think these films, first three films, are so strong because they do deal with such interesting things, and even Land to some extent. So I actually have quite a lot of time for Land.
Land has grown on me over the years.
I think there's some interesting stuff going on.
Yeah,
there.
definitely.
And actually, because there's quite a lot of like Iraq War stuff, now that's all kind of died down. It's actually more interesting because you don't see it in quite the same on the nail sort of
Yeah,
way.
there's sort of a Donald Rumsfeld feel to Dennis Hopper's character.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It feels a bit better now. It just works as its own piece, you know.
Yeah, that's the great thing about Romero's Dead canon is they're all social comments. And that particular moment right there, never see that in a film now.
That's true, actually.
Just slap your female lead. Why not?
But again, it just shows how Ben isn't a normal hero, you know. He's just a man forced into this situation. And there's just no easy answers all the way through this film. At no point are you even sure they're doing the right thing or anything. So yeah, here we go,
the
TV
radio.
scene. And I think, I have to say, I mean this quite sincerely, how did they do this in the 60s? I really don't know. Because so you have the wireless, obviously I understand that, but when he switches on the TV, I wonder how they actually put that picture in. It's quite a good effect for independent filmmakers in the 60s. It's not like they just whacked on the old video.
Yeah, that's an interesting question actually. But yeah, here we go. Here's the radio doing the exposition for us.
And again, just for its time, such an innovative idea to use this media, and I think it's what's made zombies what they are today.
I like the fact that there's no clear-cut reason for why the dead have arisen.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I said, there's no easy answers, not only in that, but in terms of a cure. They just kind of shoot them at the end, and it all kind of calms down. It's not like you ever find out, oh, we came up with a magic cure or something like that. And I think it's what keeps its effectiveness. You can't call hokum on it at any point. Like in this universe, the dead have risen, come back to life, and it's only that concept that you can have a problem with from a fiction perspective. It never tries to explain it. Which even something, say, like take The Walking Dead first season, where they introduced that whole thing, totally separate from the comics, I might add, where they had the kind of testing centre at the end, which kind of gave that even vague explanation for what was happening. You instantly can call some kind of baloney on it, whereas with this, you just have to face up to the situation, and that's all there is.
Yeah, I think it's that unknown element that gives the film its teeth. Nothing is overtly explained. It's almost like a bad dream in a way.
Yeah, definitely. And again, with that kind of expressionist lighting, slightly corny thunder effects and stuff like that, it really is like a bad dream. Where it kind of comes from nowhere.
Here you go, the trusty homemade torch. This to me reminds me of old school monster films.
Yeah.
Like the village people going to attack Frankenstein's monster.
That's true, actually. Well, I think, again, like what we've been discussing, it's interesting, and something I've not really realised till this watching, is how many traditional horror monster tropes there are in this film.
Yeah.
Like I say, we've got your lightning, your kind of expressionist lighting, like I say, you've got your fire being bad, and yet at the same time it's thrown in with all these psychological elements, slightly more lingering gore, and it's a very interesting crossroads, and one that doesn't actually feel like a crossroads, it feels like a very complete piece. And I wonder if that's because it kind of, from a supernatural element, kind of gets under your skin a bit, because it's all these things you recognise in terms of like childhood nightmare monsters, but at the same time it's with that kind of adult gritty reality. You can't just dismiss it out of hand, because like with this radio, for example, And like I say, it's amazing how many zombie films, even to this day, don't take up these tropes, which here just seems so obvious and just so cleanly done.
I think we're coming up on the introduction of the other occupant.
So Dave, I mean, we've obviously done a bit of a loving for this film. Do you think there's anything that really doesn't work about the movie?
I don't know. It's I've never ever found it dated, really. I'm not sure why, even though it's obviously a 60s movie.
I think maybe...
Maybe the characterisation of Barbara is the worst I can come up with as far as flaws go.
See, I've always quite liked Barbara. That I'm not like a huge hater of her or anything. I think maybe it's just... Obviously, because it's one of the prints, some of the prints are so ropey, it maybe would be nice to see it a little bit less foggy, I suppose, but then I haven't seen like the Blu-ray edition where it might come together a bit more. I think it's always that thing, it's just when you want to show people it for the first time who maybe aren't horror fans, it's hard to find a version that doesn't have this slightly cloudy element to it.
Trust me on this one, the 2002 Millennium Edition by Elite Entertainment is the one to get.
Really? Okay.
Crystal clear, THX certified.
Cool. I'll have to invest in that, rather than say the 80s colorised version on video.
Indeed.
And of course, I guess that's something else in the history of this. People have done some weird things with it over the year, colorisation being perhaps the main one.
Yeah, it's possibly up there with Reefer Madness for the most unjustly colorised film of all time.
Indeed. And there's been so many, like, there's a remake quite recently, actually, that starts with that shot of the car coming through, and then it pans out, and it's someone watching Night of the Living Dead. It's not good at all. Don't watch it.
Would that be the one with... what's his name? Sid Haig.
It might be, actually. Yeah, I think it is the one with Sid Haig.
It has been remade at least twice.
And of course, there's nothing to stop us making it tomorrow, is it, in the public domain?
Indeed.
So
there's also that fantastic short film, Night of the Living Bread.
I know I haven't
Seen
seen
that?
Night of the Living Bread, no. Of course, I suppose Night of the Living has become a thing in itself. And again, how long have we gone without zombies now? I suppose we saw them briefly when the fire was chucked up, but in terms of a zombie attack, it's been a long old while.
Yeah, the suspense is slowly built until it reaches a point where all hell breaks loose.
Yes, indeed.
So why do you think this film has withstood the test of time?
I think because we're watching it today for Halloween 2013, and it's still enjoyable. Like, this must be at least the 15th time I've seen it, and that's just guessing off the top of my head. It's probably more. And there's just still something gripping to it. Like you say, it hasn't dated that much. And what you think back to this film, and it seems corny just because of how horror films just appear over time. But actually, when you look at back, it's actually a surprisingly accomplished piece of filmmaking. It isn't just, oh, and it invented zombies. That is interesting. Compared to, say, like even some slasher films and stuff. It's actually a good piece of filmmaking in and of itself. Even if it hadn't invented this whole new subgenre of zombies, it would still be a good film.
Definitely.
And it's just the fact, you know, again, in the 60s film, you're dealing with all this stuff, like a corpse at the top of the stairs that is just a dead person.
If you watch carefully when Ben moves the body, you can briefly see the face.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which obviously not the dummy we saw earlier. It's Kyra Sean who plays the little kid later on.
Oh, really? Okay. I guess again, it's going to be one of those films that's going to have to recycle everyone as much as they can.
I've seen it way too many times. That's
Look
my
at the
problem.
shadows there, like that curl of the shadow.
I believe this particular design of radio was in Land of the Dead as well. In the opening
Really?
credits.
Medical authorities in Cumberland have concluded that in all cases, the killers are eating the flesh of the people they murdered.
And again, there's a
Eating this latest
dark comment for the 60s. It's
Yeah.
just have that with a voice of authority over the radio like that.
I want to say the classic interpretation of a zombie is someone controlled by another entity, right?
Yeah.
Sort of like a mass army sort of thing. But this is very much ground zero for the Walking Dead that eats human flesh.
They're kind of more, yeah, to say, I think it was always more talked as like ghouls, wasn't it, rather
Yeah.
than necessarily zombies. And again, it arrives at such a good time, this, in terms of people joining the situation.
We have one of the producers, Carl Hardman, as Harry Cooper.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He's really good as well, isn't he? I've always really liked him.
Probably one of the most hateable characters
Yeah.
in popular fiction.
But then, of course, he almost set off hateable characters in zombie films, isn't he? Like his
Indeed.
legacy.
He pretty much represents middle-class white America.
Mm.
And I believe that's Keith Wayne.
Okay.
If you'll watch carefully throughout the film, he blinks a lot.
Oh, really?
He's a persistent blinker. If you watch his performance, it drives me insane.
Oh, I'm going to have to watch that. I love his trousers as well. I've always been a big fan of his, like, bell bottom. Like, what's the guy in Scooby-Doo called? Not Shaggy.
What, Fred?
Fred, yeah, the kind of Fred-style Scooby-Doo trousers.
Yep, he's a great asshole. And like, immediately his film's sort of gone up in energy.
Mm. And I think it's what's really needed at this moment as well. Like, you couldn't sustain it with two people afterwards. It just adds this, obviously, the kind of crucial element of the film is that it is these people stuck together in an increasingly hot house. And of course, you know, again, you have like everyone's different anecdotes about what happened with the zombies. Just really starts to build a world.
Look at him there, blinking his way through his performance.
So Dave, it's something we've been meaning to discuss for a while on Squabble Box. You've always had this theory that maybe zombies have run their course, should we say, or at the very least there's been too many of them recently.
Yeah, I think it's sort of on the way. It's not here yet, but when you've got zombies on television, and with the graphic gore intact, no less.
With the what, sorry?
With the graphic gore intact.
Yes.
It's sort of like the novelty now is maybe on the way out. Because, having seen the latest episode of Walking Dead,
Not as yet.
yeah, it's a case of the novelty is definitely worn off, and we need to find fresh ways to present this material. So it basically boils down to a group of survivors in an isolated place, fending off the Walking Dead.
Do you think... See, my honest interpretation is there's plenty more to do with zombies.
I'm
It's
sure
just
there
that-
is.
Just people... Just so many zombie things are so bad. Like, it's astonishing as a genre, just how many zombie films... And not just bad in any way because they're zombies, just badly made, badly produced. It always seems like people just... It's the easy way to get into filmmaking, you know? If you want to become a filmmaker, you just make a zombie feature film and there you
Well,
go.
horror in general.
Yeah. But I just think especially zombies, there's just something about it. People, really love these films and just think you can go out there and do it. And, you know, you look at this and you can see it's a technically proficient piece of filming. And I just wonder, in the... Like I was talking earlier about kind of transmedia, in the kind of transmedia world that we live in, is there just something more interesting you could do with zombies? Like, if you were to do, like, a digital media project based around a zombie apocalypse, you know, you have lots of clips on YouTube, have some, like, podcast, tie that into something else, tie that into some blog fiction. I just think there's, if people were to put more effort into it and do something innovative, there's just so much more you could do with this same situation.
Good old jump scare there, faithfully recreated in the first Resident Evil game.
Indeed.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's there's plenty to do, But will filmmakers take the chance to do something different? I think that's the question.
I think that is the problem, isn't it? It's because I just think a lot of the tropes are still really good. I just think people aren't. There really aren't many good
But it's
zombie
like we have rom-coms with
Yeah.
zombies in them.
Yeah.
Warm bodies. When you reach that point where you can make a romantic tween film
Hmm.
where a zombie is desirable, has it not jumped the zombie shark?
Well, I just think, I think the core concept is still really strong. I just think people are using it to the wrong edge. Like I haven't actually seen Warm Bodies, but I do agree.
Neither have I.
It's just not something that ticks
No.
what I want to see. But I just think, I guess rather than like throwing the zombies out with the bathwater, so to speak, it would just be nice to see people like just do a proper good zombie film again. And it's almost like take World War Z, which came out this summer.
Which I didn't think was that good.
No, again, it just wasn't. It was all right. I think it had its good moments, but it was almost like they were trying to do something different. And I'd much rather they went back to something like this, but just do it well.
I think it was the epic, trying to be an epic scale zombie film was a detriment to it in the end.
Yeah, because it just loses it. And the
Yeah,
CGI,
yeah. It didn't have a focus to it.
See what I mean then about kind of the extras? I can't believe the stuff they got those extras to do. It was really weird. Like which big fat bloke dressed up in like a little sheet for $1? Seriously? Like who was eating like bloody moss off the tree for $1? They really got some genuinely amazing people in there. Had a real production value to it.
Not quite as bad as like the offal and intestines or whatever they're doing later on.
Yeah, that's true. But it's true though, isn't it? Though, like who was doing that?
You already want to throw out Harry to the zombies.
But I just think, yeah, I just love to see some proper good zombie films. Because how many can you really name? Like I would go Night, Dawn, Day, personally Land. Like,
If it's debatable whether 28 days and 28 weeks are zombies,
Yeah.
yes, they're infected. The same difference.
but even then, it's
I'd include
controversial.
them.
Like, Return of the Living Dead. It's good, but it's not the same thing, is it? You know, they're doing something a bit sillier with it.
Though I do love the fact that they reference Night of the Living Dead as an event.
Oh yeah, that's true actually. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. But you know, I mean, Zombie Flesh Eaters is alright, but it's only alright. It's quite funny the way where they fight a shark.
Lucia Fulci?
Yes.
I'm not a fan.
But and then I quite liked. I did quite like Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I thought that was pretty good actually. I think someone makes
For a retread of the same idea, it's a very, very good film. You can't call them totally the same or anything. It's very much his take.
definitely.
Whereas the version of Day of the Dead that came
Oh
out
my god, it's stressful.
with Ving Rhames,
God. Who ironically was in. Was he in Dawn of the Dead?
yes, he was.
Yeah, he was, wasn't he? Yeah.
But as a completely different guy.
Yeah. But apart from that, I swear there's another one I saw that's quite good. I always heard there's one from Australia that's meant to be really good, but I haven't seen it and I always forget the name of it. And there's that really weird, is it called...
Dead by Dawn, Dead Next Door.
There's Delamorto something.
I write with what's his name? Rupert Everett.
Yeah, it's the really
Yeah, right.
weird, like sexy one. But again, it's not that fantastic.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And then apart from that, you know, I actually quite liked... was it Video of the Dead? The one that came out... Not Video of the Dead, that's a documentary about... Not the Living Dead. Maybe Document of the Dead, which is like a British one where they kind of shoot it all on VHS. But even that kind of more, because it ticks my own boxes rather than it's actually good.
Yeah.
And it just feels like people don't actually invest. You never get any like £10 million zombie films, you know. And that's what I would like to see. Is like someone like, say, Alexandre Ajar have like 10 million and do a really interesting zombie film that not as interesting because it bends it, But it's interesting because it's just good characters in a zombie film.
Yeah.
I think that's what you don't see enough
To,
of.
to me, for that reason, one of the most interesting in recent years would be Zombieland.
Good
On,
show.
on,
Yeah,
a, on a
good
character
show.
level.
Good
Because it is
show.
very much a character-driven film where
Yeah.
the zombies are almost incidental in a way.
I completely agree. That's one I would totally add to this as an actual genuine good zombie film, considering it was posed as like a comedy.
Yeah.
Because it just follows the rules, and it just does something interesting with the characters. And I think that's what seems to me zombie films are a bit stuck in. They either follow the rules, but they're not very good, or they try and do something different, and they're more well produced. You never get something that's just like this.
There's a radio upstairs and you boarded it.
I think the moral is if you keep finding characters that are thematically interesting and can create drama, then it doesn't matter because the zombies are there to put the genre element in there.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because it's never about the zombies themselves. I mean, I suppose the other good example, not film, is the Walking Dead comic book. It's going for 10 years, this October in fact. It's ironic it could be a Squabble Box thing about that very fact, and that's always worked so well, because A, it's been this recurring zombie character that sticks within the rules, within a realist element, and it just sticks around the characters instead. And I think you can see why there's been such a strong reaction to that, because it is so well written. And I really do firmly believe you could make a zombie film tomorrow that would be as good as this.
Yeah, I mean, there's also stories that might not be classed as zombie films, but I consider them that, like Re-Animator, which is about a doctor reanimating dead tissue, much in the same fashion as Frankenstein. There's so many permutations that filmmakers can do
Yeah,
to
sure.
play with that idea.
And again, it already feels very like cramped, doesn't it? That's what I've always quite liked about this. Maybe it's just the 4x3, but you really get a sense of these are just people stuck in this nasty little environment. And it just seems so obvious these days. But again, for the time, there's not really anything like this.
It's funny aside as well, I think this basement was the Image 10 headquarters.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's silly. I think it's quite a gloomy place to work.
Or at least the basement of their building.
So you see, again, we're recording this in October 2013, so we'll keep it brief in case this is old hat. But you see the Romero's doing some comics in January as well.
Yeah, it's a continuation of Land.
Yeah, which is
after
interesting.
that, yeah.
Looking forward to that. And I feel, you know, Diary and, what was it, Survival?
Oh, didn't see that. It's not meant to be good.
I mean, it's alright. It's just, it's very, very weird by that point. There's no great rush to see it.
I was going to say as well, is this one of the first examples of spreading the zombie disease by bites?
I'm not sure actually.
Would there have been a precedent before this?
I'm not entirely sure. Again, if it is, it just goes to show, doesn't it, how much...
I'm going to say, because that
important
has pretty much been the rule for everything else.
like, it really does make the rules up as it goes along and just brings it all together. And of course, when you do have the kid later on, it's such a horrible image, again, for the 60s, isn't it? It's really violent, even by today's standards. I mean, I imagine this still an 18. This film's still an 18.
I'm not sure. You'd imagine so. I always thought Harry's wife was too hot for Harry.
Don't be afraid of me. I'm Helen Cooper.
Hey, Helen Cooper!
And it's an interesting point, this. We've gone a long time now where these characters have just been talking to each other.
Yeah, it's
I
a
think-
good point.
They were quite clever about how they do bring in an action beat relatively soon with the petrol station.
Her brother was killed.
But even then, these actors are carrying it at what is probably like, not the low point of the film, but the point where you're levelling out now in terms of action and dialogue. You've set the scene.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe that this was the first feature on a double bill in drive-ins.
Yeah.
You know, no one really had any anticipation for it whatsoever. It was only really when it became a midnight movie in the 70s that it really became like a classic.
You can totally see why as well, can you?
Here we go with the TV.
And again, what production values? It's the thing that always sets me off, is it doesn't actually feel that low budget. But this is the thing, if anyone, again, please get in touch if you know how they did this scene, because I'm genuinely quite confused by it. See this scene, this effect here. This is the one bit that's a little bit 60s, that kind of... So you see, how did they do that effect, I wonder? It really, I've always wondered that. Unless they literally did something, you know, we wouldn't even think about now, like cutting a frame within the frame or something.
It would be like a superimposition on the image.
Yeah.
So,
Looks really good though, doesn't it?
definitely. Yeah. And I like the sort of old school flavour to it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a testament to the film that even though there's plenty of elements that are screaming it's dated, it does not matter.
And this is the thing, I think the production value really comes through in these news broadcasts. Like that really does look like a news studio. It doesn't look like someone just sitting at a desk or something.
Yeah, I think it's very true to life as well that they're giving out facts, but they're not giving out the entire picture.
Definitely.
It's very scattered, and that helps build up the fear element.
The persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder.
And just again, that can be from a zombie film 1 year ago, you know.
Morgues and hospitals has concluded that the
I've always,
unburied dead
what I'd always love to see is, did you ever watch on the Dawn of the Dead, the new one, the Zack Snyder one on the DVDs? They had a little like 50 minutes thing, which was just news footage basically about the zombies sort of coming to. It was really interesting. It was just like a news report over like certain hours and stuff. It was quite fun and like a little bit cheesy, but quite quite nicely done. And I always wondered, it'd be great. Something I'd love to see is a 90-minute zombie film that was just news footage.
That would be interesting.
It'd be really cool,
Yeah.
like a kind of documentary almost.
That'd be a new way to do it.
But just this, like literally just this for 90 minutes, you know? And just see how it kind of builds up, see how it affects the people in the studio. But never cut away, always just treat it like, almost shoot it in a kind of BBC style. That CNN style for our American listeners.
Yeah, it's also kind of greatly referenced at the start of Dawn as well in the newsroom and the rising hysteria.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just literally just have that,
The presidential cabinet, the FBI, Joint Chiefs of Staff, the CIA has not produced any public information.
And it's just interesting, this really sucks you in, doesn't it? You totally start to believe it. You forget about the problems with the threat outside from a sort of corny perspective and really start to suck in to this world.
Yeah, I believe some of the people are actual real Pittsburgh news
Oh
broadcasters.
yeah. What a fun thing to do as well. That's been well cool.
Well, there's a great thing about Shaun of the Dead is they have the Sky News guy in there.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Always has that little kick.
Newsman Don Quinn in Washington has posed those questions. Trying to get out of here. How are you going to get over to that pump at the White House?
And this stuff as well, I mean, it looks great, doesn't it?
Yes, that was the subject of the meeting. I feel there's a connection between this and the phenomenon. There's a definite connection.
I believe Romero has a cameo in this scene somewhere. I'm not sure which one.
It's hard to tell whether it's beer here, isn't it? And of course, I mean, this does often kind of posit that there might be some kind of moon landing thing. Sorry, not moon landing, but space age thing. And again, what I think to take when obviously space is seen as such a positive thing on the American dream, to have this effect that it might wipe out America.
Yeah.
I suppose that does kind of hark back a little bit to those 50s monster movies.
That's the amazing thing. I suppose a year before the moon landing. You know.
But again, all this stuff, sort of, if you imagine within like the world of those 50s monster movies, like this is what must have been on the telly almost. And it's really nice to actually see it in a film.
And obviously they filmed in Washington DC here as well. Just put a camera on his shoulder and follow these guys.
Yeah, about it's a matte painting.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, what production value to have the what else then in the background? And then even in this early footage, there's a chaotic element to it. It doesn't feel, it's never polished, is it? And that's why it's always really nice, I think, in a zombie film when you have the news report slowly start to fall downhill as it all starts to tumble out of control.
I suppose the ultimate social comment Romero zombie film would be zombies attacking the White House.
Yeah.
Why haven't we seen that film yet?
Be like White House down, but with zombies.
We were on our way up to the lake to go swimming. Judy had a radio and we heard the first reports about this.
Gosh, he does blink quite a lot, doesn't he?
Blink, blink. See, you'll always notice that from now on, Dylan. It's a performance via blinks.
Put a bar across the door and it is pretty strong. How do we possibly get away from here? We've got a sick child, 2 women, one woman out of her head, 2 men, and the place is surrounded.
Glasses as well are so good.
Your entire staff, I know, has been working very hard.
So can you remember, Dave, about the first time you watched this film?
The first time I watched this film was unfortunately the 30th anniversary edition, and I had no idea that it had added scenes. It was on a VHS as well.
Oh, VHS, I think mine was a DVD. But,
Yeah. I bought it knowing full well that it was a genre classic, thinking, yeah, it's gonna be great, and then being slightly disillusioned with the added scenes at the start. And it was brought to my attention that that is not the original version of the film. So I rectified my mistake maybe a year later and bought a DVD.
Had to be done, I think, didn't it? Yeah. And, well, I mean, were you about 15 at the time then, or...?
Around that,
Yeah.
20.
I think it's a good age to watch it, you know.
But it opened his eyes and tried to move.
Yeah, it's like, it's a testament to the film that even at that age you could appreciate it.
I don't understand. Babe?
Like, I think it is... Maybe, yeah, I think that's the one thing. How would you get someone to say, if they don't like zombie films, you kind of feel they should watch this, how would you get them into watching the film?
The body should be disposed of at
If they didn't like zombie movies, I'd say at least give the progenitor of most of the modern zombie films a go before you write them off completely.
Oh, you're right. It doesn't give them time
Make sure they watch an HD version rather than, like, you know, clouding on YouTube.
to street and burn. They must be burned immediately. Soak them with gas.
I know, it's like, as you say, it's about the characters.
Forego the dubious
The zombies are an embellishment, really.
They're just dead flesh.
And there is this realism, you know, which I think a lot of people get, you know, thinking that, like, zombies now are just like people just do backflips and just shoot with shotguns and stuff. Whereas with this, there is just this social realist core to the element, to the heart of it.
It's about the darkness of the human spirit and how when the end comes, we can't work together.
I'll check.
These people are against each other from the beginning, really.
Meantime, a couple of us can go out and try to get the gas.
Definitely.
It's their own fault that it ends in the way it does.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah, that's right. Better be this door. It's closer to the truck.
If you think of Day of the Dead, it's devolved to the point where, you know, the refuges of humans are living underground in a cavern to stay alive.
Yeah, and still rank with each other. Do you think these films are canon in that sense? Do you think Day of the Dead is a direct, in the same universe? A direct
I'm not
movie?
sure they are. No, I'm pretty sure Romero thought of all of them as a separate entity. Yeah. But that said, Land definitely takes place after Day because it carries the theme of the zombies getting small.
I mean, even in this one, you look back to this very start and they're still doing things like attacking the car with a brick and stuff. And again, apologies if this is old hat now, but it will be interesting to see when the comics come out what he does with that, because one thing he wants to say is bring in that very much the intelligence aspect of zombies. Which again is interesting, isn't it? Because so many people obviously literally talk about zombies as being brain dead. And yet even here you can see he's trying to make them be reflections of us rather than separate creatures.
So, Dylan, where do you stand on the sequels, if you can call them sequels?
Well, I think what's interesting about the sequels, looking back at this film, is you can actually see a lot of the tropes that you find in the sequels in this original movie. For example, things like the rednecks who come and shoot the zombies at the end is something that's such a big part of Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Even the whole people under pressure is essentially what Dawn, Day and Land are all about. And also just the fact that the zombies do pretty much stay the same, although they might get slightly more intelligent. He never takes the risk of doing fast zombies or anything like that. And for me, I still think Day of the Dead, like I said earlier, is my favourite.
I'd say out of the original trilogy is probably the best made of the three. I'd say, especially because of Tom Savini's makeup effects are amazing.
Yeah, sure, yeah. They still have a real tangibility to them, don't they? But what I really like about all three films is they have a very distinct feel. Of many horror films, actually, this could probably be the three films, if you know, even Land actually, that all have a very, very distinct feel. This is not just the same stuff rehashed. And I think that's one of the reasons why they've lasted so long, is you look at night and it's completely different to day, it's completely different to dawn, and yet at the same time the same themes run through them. They both feel like sequels and yet also feel like totally different movies, and I think that's really in their credit.
Yep. I've got to appreciate Day, especially, definitely. It's the most pessimistic of the three. Land flawed because it was meant to be a much bigger movie, wasn't it? And they cut it down for budget. Haven't seen Survival.
Survival's not worth rushing to. Like, it's not as bad as Diary, in my opinion.
Really? I didn't mind Diary. It was alright.
Oh, I've never been a fan, I have to say. Like, it is going back to that more traditional style. It's just the whole concept's really weird. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it gets really confusing.
It's also kind of a reboot, isn't it, of the series? It doesn't follow any other continuity.
Like, I always thought it was a real shame they never went further with the characters from Land. You know, I was quite happy to see what they did next, rather than take it off in this whole new route.
Yeah.
And I kind of wished almost that he'd done Diary as a very different thing. Again, because it just seems so negative about new media and stuff, which I thought was really weird. I wish he'd done it as a kind of thing in and of itself, rather than make it part of his kind of dead, whatever it is, sex trooper league.
Yeah. I suppose the beauty of Dawn of the Dead as well is being holed up in a place where that holds everything you could possibly desire.
And I think even like down to the zombie effects all have a lovely different feel to them. Like obviously in this one they're quite ghoul-like and pasty.
Yep.
Whereas obviously classically in Dawn they have this weird like blue makeup effect.
Which wasn't actually intended.
Oh, really?
It's the way the makeup photographed.
Oh really?
Which Savini wasn't happy about.
Like it does look weird, you know,
Yeah.
it doesn't look like a dead body, it certainly has its own style. And like I personally don't have a problem with it, but it's very unique, put it that way, which is not necessarily a good thing. And then obviously when it comes to Day, it just, you know, looks fantastic.
Day looks amazing,
Yeah.
to this day, yeah.
And of course this is my thing, you know, ironically what so many zombie films still fall down on are the zombies. They just don't look convincing at all. They do just look like people with a bit of red makeup splashed in their face. And I think that was something actually to take Shaun of the Dead, regardless of its credits as a comedy film. One of the things that really works from a horror perspective is the zombies look really good, and it just adds a really important layer of believability to it. Like you never laugh at Shaun of the Dead because it's like, it's a cheesy zombie film. It's always because the comedy happens within quite a believable zombie world, and it's a huge difference, I think. And I guess, you just don't see that makeup quality. I mean, I always thought this scene, we have the scene here with the trucks and the burning Molotov cocktails. Again, for what is supposedly it's like the king of the low-budget horror movies, well, we still have people petrol bombing a car.
Yeah.
And then later on that car blows up. You know, it's still a damn good scene that you couldn't do. You know, people would not be able to make this in like the UK if they're on a supposedly low budget.
And here's the zombie on fire.
Yeah, like that's a serious makeup effect, you know. Sorry, serious special effect. And I think that's the problem, is that people assume that actually what was easy about this film was that it somehow did some kind of low budget thing. But actually, if you look at this looks like any decent horror film from the period. It doesn't. You're not like, this is obviously the low-budget cousin to others of its time, is it? Compared to like bloody Tarantula or something like that, where they just like drop a bomb on a big photo of a tarantula at the end.
Yeah, this film has no real predecessors in a way.
But it actually genuinely is really well produced. And what's amazing now, like the outside becomes such a menace. Because we haven't been outside now for a good probably an hour of the film, maybe a bit less than that. But like, you really don't want to be outside now, do you? And again, it's a good credit to the extras who really work really hard for $1. Like, it's a professional movie made by semi-professionals,
Yeah, as part of as a product on its own, I don't think Romero's really beating it. It's just very tight. It knows exactly what it is, and it achieves its goals.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think of Romero as a director?
As a director, he's a good filmmaker. I'm not sure if I'd class him as one of the greatest directors of all time. I'd say his writing skills are what make his films what they are. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, ironic. What I think is a bit weird is his editing skills are very good as well. Like, I don't know if you've seen The Crazy. It's one of the really good things. Like, not the world's greatest film, but it's really well edited, and you can really see that in a lot of his work. Is that he can really bring something together.
I always like that shooting the gas bomb.
Yeah, definitely.
Just no.
But again, look here. I mean, this is a proper good effect.
Yeah, but like, it's like a few famous directors from the period could have taken this script and I suppose made something of it. But yeah, no one can deny he knows how to shoot a horror film.
And Creepshow as well.
Indeed.
Interesting one where he had to really balance like the kind of EC horror side of it with that humour element. And I think he did a really good job. It's one of my favourites.
Also, yeah, like Assumption, there's no hope when the two youngest characters get killed off.
Yeah, sure.
Probably the two of the dumbest characters as well.
Yeah. But again, I do wonder, just in the technicalities, how they actually shot all that stuff. It looks really good. And again, of course, there's that real physicality, which a lot of CGI projects can't match. And a lot of, even real effects projects shot on a low budget can't match. I always think that's the thing, if you are going to do something of this nature, you've got to be able to do something like blow up a car. It's something like, say Mad Max. One of the reasons Mad Max is so good, because there are just so many car crashes in it, and in the end they obviously get to tow their own cars and stuff. It just makes a big difference.
One of the big so-called gore moments coming up where they take the bodies out of the truck. I always wondered, did they go to a butcher's to get the intestinal joint? Or...
It must have. Do you know much about, in terms of censorship, was it heavily censored at the time?
No, I mean, it mostly played in, on double bills and grindhouses and stuff. No one really paid much attention to it. As I say, it was only until, it was discovered on the midnight movie circuit that people really started to, acclaim it, so to speak.
But only just because it is so horrible for its time, it's just...
Oh yeah, there were definitely criticisms for the violence.
Yeah.
The critics at the time only saw the violent aspect of it rather than the social commentary.
Yeah, sure. But again, this threat, it's weird, isn't it? After we've had such a quiet hour, it really just builds it so well in terms of pace and action. And yeah, like I said before, outside just seems completely decimated once you've had the news reports and everything like that.
Here we go. Bit of racial tension comes to the fore.
And of course, considering this is just library music, it's all right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that something else about the 30th anniversary? I seem to remember, they put that score in, didn't they? They put in the new score.
I tried to forget that version, so I can't remember.
Yeah, I seem to remember the score wasn't that bad. It was just it's such a needless thing to do,
Yeah, the acting in this film really isn't bad.
No. It's what saved it, I think. If the acting was really corny.
Here we go, some good flesh eating.
To reiterate the points I've raised before, what the hell are these guys doing for $1? This is ridiculous. And also, just for its time, what a horrific scene when you think about it.
Though it became a thing later on to be a zombie in a Romero film.
Yeah, had a bit of credit to it.
Here we go.
But, that's horrific,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like, that's still genuinely nasty to this day,
A bit of liver.
Yeah. And there's a really good, again, it's a real good physicality to all this stuff, it doesn't look like they're just eating, fake meat or something like that, It's a great hand effect, yeah, it's horrible. And they do look really, crazy, They're really scary.
Yeah, it's also very subtle makeup on the zombies.
Yeah. Which I think a lot of people, again, forget these days.
Yep.
And I suppose one of the advantages of shooting in black and white as well is it's so much more forgiving in that regard.
There's supposed to be another broadcast at 3 o'clock.
10 minutes.
Oh, only 10 more minutes?
I kind of forgotten Barbara.
Yeah.
We can leave. Oh, we better leave soon. It's 10 minutes to 3.
Yeah, so preparing for the last
You know
time.
anything about this area at all? I mean, is Woolwich the nearest town?
I don't know.
It's also amazing as well, the career Romero had immediately after this, because fairly obvious they didn't want to go back to zombies straight away.
Yeah, sure.
Since Dawn was a good 10 years later.
Yeah.
You think we can get him back on his Wilson driving? Where is he?
What did he do? He had Martin, was it?
Yeah, Martin was
His
really...
take on vampire films.
It's really interesting, actually. It's really
Yeah.
worth a look if you haven't seen it.
Get it.
I
At least a
can't remember if it was before he did that really crazy film Night Riders. You heard about that one? Which is absolutely...
No, that's early 80s.
Yeah, that's early 80s, isn't it? It's still batshit, though.
What's wrong with
I mean, he's done some weird stuff, hasn't he? Up and down, let's face it. And
Hit her on the arm.
it's one of those guys just...
What's wrong?
I wonder if he did set out to become the horror guy that he's become.
Yeah, not all directors do.
And
Can't walk. She's too weak.
just because I guess he's always been able to find work in that field.
Just to try to get to the car.
Obviously, he's always had that kind of love. He could do any convention he wanted, couldn't he?
Start the car. Johnny has the keys.
So, I suppose the best example would be with Wes Craven. He wanted to make so many different types of films.
Yeah.
But because he made The Last House on the Left, that was all anyone would ever give him from then on. I'm sure it was probably a similar situation for Romero.
And I guess when you start to think like, if you can start getting paid hundreds of thousands of pounds to do what you want to do anyway, if you have to stick to a certain genre, is that bad,
Plus, there's just so much money in horror films if you can actually pull them off.
Yeah. We'll take something like Paranormal Activity.
Yeah, it's probably the only genre that you can have a massive blockbuster hit without any name actors in it.
Yeah, it's very true.
So the genre works for itself.
I guess because the monsters themselves become the hits.
Yep.
Government spokesman warned that dead bodies will continue to be transformed into the flesh-eating ghouls.
And again, of course, you still have this just constant media presence throughout, which I think is just so important to a zombie film. It's beautifully done in Dawn of the Dead, actually. When the telly finally switches off, it's really good. And I think one of the really scary things about Dawn of the Dead is the way the TV studio just sort of breaks down, and you really do just get a sense that that's the end of everything.
By Sheriff McClellan in Butler County, Pennsylvania. So now let's go to that film report.
So yeah, you can very much see the influence of Dawn of the Dead here.
There's coming up Chili Billy Cardell, a local Pittsburghian news reporter. Yeah, that's what you can see the relation to lynching mobs here.
But even just what good production value for again a supposedly low budget film. It's got a huge cast, like a casting probably
Yep.
50 plus actors more. Like all these police cars, all these costumes. It isn't just 5 people locked in a house at all.
This is the best guy of this guy.
Yeah. But
They're
again,
dead. They're all messed up.
but also what good acting as well,
Yep, Chili Billy Cardell,
Yeah.
the star of Day of the Dead.
Yeah. Really?
Laurie Cardell is his
Oh,
daughter.
really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. God, it's weird, isn't it?
Caught trying to claw their way into an abandoned shed. They must have thought somebody was in there. There wasn't, though.
But it just adds such an extra layer, doesn't it? This whole media stuff.
Yeah, you just gotta love the guy's like nonchalant attitude to what's going on.
And that kind of business broadcasting professional.
That's it. No one has more fun in the Living Dead trilogy than rednecks.
Yeah. Well, that's always the thing, until the dead, you never quite know what happened to them, do they? They always seem to be alright. Like, and of course, that's always been the kind of the theory behind all of it, isn't it? That actually, as enemies go, they're pretty rubbish, aren't they, zombies? You can pretty much nail them straight away. And actually, it's only the kind of problems in humanity that make them take over.
Yeah,
like,
it's
if you all
sort
came together, you could eliminate the threat pretty
Yeah,
quickly.
it's when there's like a mass of them that you have the problem.
Yeah. All you need to do is band together.
Thank you, Bill, for that report. Official spokesman declined to speculate just how long it may take to kill off all the flesh eaters, so long as the heavy rain.
That's a great, isn't it? Yeah, where the darkness comes. You said that, again, that's such a classic horror trope. Like, if we consider, we were talking about the thunder and lightning earlier, which was pretty naff. Like, that is actually really scary there, isn't it? You're like, oh, snap.
This is the fuse. The power lines are down.
Yeah, it's great photography in that the way they use the available light that's there. As you say, very German expressionism.
Like, we could be watching something like 1910 here, isn't it? If you took the sound off it. And of course, there you go. You have this idea, like, intelligent zombies all the way back then. It's interesting how he always seems to be interested in certain things.
Yep.
All the way back here.
And so I'm not sure if anyone's actually done the concept of an intelligent zombie other than Romero.
It's true, actually. Well, because it kind of, I guess, because the thing is, stuff like warm bodies, they're a bit more intelligent. But you have that kind of semi-intelligence.
But that's a completely different take anyway.
Oh, sure, yeah. No, but I mean, like, even to have that intelligent zombies. Like, there's a Stephen King novel, Cell,
Yep.
where you kind of have it to some extent. But even that's not proper zombies,
Which is finally being made into a film.
Yeah,
I
is
believe.
it?
Yeah.
It's not Eli Roth anymore, then,
No.
I assume, yeah. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. It's a strange one of his books.
Yeah, as long as they carry on finding new ways to use zombies, then that's fair enough. And that if the quality is maintained.
I just think, yeah, it's almost like people, you can just whack zombies in it and that's it these days.
But it's not just the films, is it? It's games, it's novels, it's comic books. I think we will reach a point where there's nothing left to say.
I just think,
With the basic formula, anyway.
I just would like to see it really slickly done again, considering how many remakes there's been of all this and stuff.
Yeah.
You just would like to see something a bit more interesting. Like, even if you just get some British filmmakers do it in not necessarily Not the Living Dead, but do something similar even in a British house in the country. I think there's a lot you could do with it.
There's Ben shooting Harry,
Yeah.
big turning point in the film.
But then, of course, yeah, if you think about it, it's always been the thing even back here that it's humanity that's the problem. Slightly corner axing that, as Steve said. But we're coming up now to really shocking ending.
Also coming up to some quality matricide.
Yeah. But it's a really nasty thing, this ending. Again, especially for the period, but even to this day. Like, I wonder how many modern films would even go this far. Supposedly even, world of like torture porn and stuff like that. Actually, this is still a shocking ending.
It is. And if you consider all the social ramifications of the idea.
Definitely. And it is kind of nice how everything sort of comes together here, it's a very tight told story, because you obviously have Johnny coming back in a minute, you have the child, the ill child becoming the dead child and stuff, nothing's kind of left, and even obviously with the final redneck ending it works.
Oh, this is one of my favourite deaths in the history of cinema.
Yeah.
When she picks up this troll.
Like, it's so stressful, isn't it? And again, I know it sounds stupid, but what good dead acting by this
I've
child.
got to say, yeah, this is just a horrible, horrible death.
Yeah. And there's something, again, it's about the lighting effects and everything, black and white. It just still looks really stressful, doesn't it? Like, the only thing I was never too sure about the kind of voice, the way it changes.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit. I almost wonder if they had to do it just because otherwise it would be too full on. You know, if they had to make it slightly more dreamy. But then to bring it back to your point about a nightmare, then here it is really in the flesh.
Yeah.
Like such good cinematography.
Good splash of chocolate syrup there.
Yeah. Of course, there you go. You have the zombie from the start. And that was, of course, the other thing about the 30th anniversary. It's like, it's not like you look at this and go, oh, I wonder what his backstory was, do you? You know? And of course, I guess you realise with Johnny coming back that it can be anyone. This is what this ending comes to be. It's not just like some army of people you don't know about. Like, it is in your home right now. You know, everyone you know could become a zombie. And that's obviously something that's lasted as well.
It's also worth saying as well, in his other films, the main protagonists, there's usually someone left at the end.
Yeah.
But in this film, they're all dead.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely the bleakest.
Absolutely. And like, again, what good production value for a supposedly low budget film.
So now we're coming up to the big gut punch ending. What did you think at on your first viewing
I
of this
was
film?
proper shocked, I have to say. I didn't know that it was coming at all. And I was really shocked by the final moments of this film. They really did. Yeah, it was a proper gut punch. And, you know, whether it does have a race element or not, I'm not sure. But it's such a bleak ending.
Well, intentional or unintentional or not, it works on another level.
Mm. And of
You can
course,
definitely see like the you know, parallels to lynching mobs and the horrible things that are going on back then.
and of course, in terms of like, we're talking about heroes and villains and stuff. Everything sort of falls apart here. You know, the character we've been following since the start, Barbara, has not really done anything for the whole film, and then just sort of gets wiped out. Ben, you know, has obviously been our sort of hero here. His plan, the whole point of his plan, was not to go down to the cellar, and yet here he is, forced into the cellar. And again, even that, there's just something so creepy about that.
Yeah, it's I've seen this film like plenty of times now, including like twice on a cinema screen with an audience, and you can tell the people who haven't seen it before
Yeah.
genuinely like shocked that the hero gets killed in such a, you know, throwaway fashion.
Yeah. And what's it like seeing it on a cinema screen? I don't think it's something I've actually done myself. I mean, with an audience, like not just like say a film studies class or something. What's it like in a live cinema?
Yeah, I saw it at the Phoenix in Leicester, and it works, man. This film has never failed to work for me anyway.
And is it something that gets like audible reactions at certain points? Can you remember? Or
Yeah. I mean, you could tell there was a fair amount of people in the crowd who hadn't seen it. You know, young to old. I think it appeals to a wide variety of ages, which is an amazing accomplishment.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think as it just taps into so many of your nightmares, it's something that obviously everyone knows about death, and everyone understands it. You don't have to have any kind of cultural back references to get it. And then you cut to this, of course.
Yeah.
Finally seems like there might be some hope.
think the cavalry's coming,
But-
but
Again, I'm sorry to keep reiterating this, but they've got a freaking helicopter, man.
Yeah.
It's damn good, you know. Even if that's just them randomly filming. No, well, no, it's not. Is it? Look, there's your helicopter shot. Like, this film, you could believe it had a budget of like, you know, the equivalent of 5 million today, couldn't you? Like, totally.
it is amazing they pulled it off on just over 100 grand.
Yeah,
It really is.
they got some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's, you know, maybe what the next zombie filmmaker really needs to do is take some risks, not with the like style, like not with, you know, make it fast zombies or make it talking zombies or shit like that, but make something that really works, make something that people are like, wow, that actually felt really realistic.
No, I think your idea of making a film out of news broadcast and such would be fantastic.
It'd be awesome, but I'd love to see it.
We want to get about 4 or 5 men and a couple dogs in the house over here behind those trees. We want to go check it out. You can come here, Bill.
Like, you know, you can make it a real solid like 90-minute, 2-hour, you know, where it just builds, maybe have something else, talking about something else to begin with, you know, and it just builds and builds and builds.
Something these guys are having the time of their lives.
But again, it's nice to bring all these elements together, you know, like you've had the people on the news and stuff, and again, look at this, it's great stuff, isn't it? It's really totally believable. That's why this film works, is it's, the world it builds is very believable.
Poor old Ben.
Yeah, every time you
I
get to
never
this
felt
point,
to feel sorry for the guy.
you get to this point, don't you, and you just like, wish it didn't happen. And even in the daylight, the zombies still look pretty good.
Yeah, it's like, I even feel sorry for the zombies at this point.
Well, of course, that's the thing with it. It's so bleak, isn't it? It's a situation where no one's winning here. You know, it's just tasks that have to be done, which I guess is very much like the Vietnam War, isn't it? It's not some kind of goody versus baddies thing. It's a real, like, big mess where no one's really winning. So, Dave, reaching the end of the film, what do you think now we've watched it again? Why would you recommend it so much?
To me, it's just the ultimate zombie film, you know. Plenty of films have made better on a technical scale, but it's got everything you could possibly want in a zombie film.
I think what I've been quite surprised by is how technically adept it is.
Yeah.
I never quite realised quite how strong it was. And it isn't just a case of saying to someone, oh, you like zombie films, go back and watch this one because it's so important historically. It is actually still one of the most amazing zombie films out there.
Definitely, I'd agree.
And even here, when we have this final moment, there aren't many zombie films that still take it this far. Like you said earlier, there is still usually a survivor, at least one at the end of a film.
The first time I saw this, it was truly, truly gutting.
Yeah. And like I say, we've been talking about this kind of slide of bleakness all the way through, and this is just the final moment of it.
Yeah. No Dawn of the Dead cheese music, charge to the helicopter,
Absolutely.
shot to the face.
And also, like, just in terms about humanity getting on, it's a kind of really depressing, like, passive element of that even when humans don't even meet each other, it's still not working.
Okay, he said, let's go get him. That's another one for the fire.
So, yeah, then we have this rather horrific lynch mob style photography at the end. So yeah, that's it. That's our Scorebox podcast of Night of the Living Dead for Halloween 2013. You can find out many more articles, hopefully more videos, podcasts and much more at scorebox.co.uk, or alternatively you can look at Facebook and type in Scorebox and our Facebook group should come up. Dave, I always forget our Twitter handle, so if you could sort that out.
That's twitter.com/ScribbleBoxHQ.
And that's at ScoreboxHQ, I assume. Okay, and we've got plenty more exciting content on the way. If you have enjoyed this, why not leave a comment saying what you thought of it, saying if there's something we should have added, or if there's any points you want us to raise. And indeed, if there's any more films you want us to do in the future, don't hesitate to get in touch. We may have to watch it in terms of copywriting if it's not public domain, but you never know. And That's it. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Dylan Spicer.
I'm Dave James. Thank you for listening.
And again, that's squabblebox.co.uk. So why not get in touch as you watch these bleak photos of people being dismembered and generally set on fire. And Dave, I believe that's you just there in the credits as well.
Yeah, indeed. Time travel exists, man.
Yeah. Any idea what your role was in this?
Probably just a PA.
So
That's that.
there we have it.
Until next time, folks.
I'll see you around.
Bye-bye.
Take care.